All right. Well, good morning and welcome to the second annual, today virtual, Lehigh Valley Internship Summit, presented by Highmark Blue Shield. My name is Carrie Ann Galinas, and I'm the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Research at the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation. We're so glad that you've joined us today to learn more about attracting interns to your business. I'm sure that you'll take away new ideas and beneficial tips from our speakers on how to market your business's value proposition, on how to attract and engage potential interns, and how to make the experience a success for both your business and the interns who work with you. We're grateful for our sponsors today who made this event possible. Highmark Blue Shield is our presenting sponsor, and we thank them for their support. We'd also like to thank and recognize our other sponsors, East Stroudsburg University, Muhlenberg College, and Northampton Community College for their support in making this event possible. Their sponsorship enabled us to offer this event under today's unique circumstances. And I'd also like to thank Penn State Lehigh Valley for hosting the event, guiding us through the technological issues, and contributing their expertise. This event and the Lehigh Valley's talent initiatives are a collaborative endeavor championed by the Education and Talent Supply Council, local employers, the Workforce Board Lehigh Valley, our region's colleges and universities, career and technical schools, K-12 systems, and LVEDC. The creation of this year's Internship Summit was built from the ideas and insights, time and effort of our colleges and universities who work with students, your potential interns, every day. Couple of quick logistics for today's event. The presenters will each share about attracting interns to their businesses, followed by a Q&A. You can see at the bottom of your screen, you have the option to type your questions for the presenters in the chat box. We'll get to as many questions as possible today, and you're welcome to contact me if you'd like any follow-up after the event. We have two guest speakers today. I'm so glad that they're with us today. They have so much to share. Lisa Brogan is the Program Manager for University Recruiting at OLYMPUS Corporation of the Americas. And Corey Stevens is the Volunteer and Internship Programs Manager at ArtsQuest. Lisa, can you tell us a bit about your role and about OLYMPUS?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Carrie Ann. So as Carrie Ann said, I'm the program manager for university recruiting at OLYMPUS. And I know many students come up and know OLYMPUS as either the company that sits on 78 with the big logo that you can see, or the camera company. But we're not just a camera company. In fact, the primary focus of our business is medical devices as well as scientific and industrial solutions. Each year, we do have our year-round internship and co-op programs, and I thought pertinent to share today would be more information about our summer interns. So each summer we host approximately 50 interns across a variety of areas in the business, engineering, marketing, finance, and other corporate functions throughout the United States. So the majority of our interns sit in our office in Center Valley, and then we also have offices from the West Coast to the East Coast in other locations. My role is the Program Manager of University Recruiting, so I manage those programs as well as the recruitment for them. And previous to working at OLYMPUS in this role, I was working at a boutique consulting company in Philadelphia where I, as part of my role, managed the recruiting there. So I've had opportunity to do recruiting not just at a large company like OLYMPUS, but started at a much smaller company in my recruiting in that consulting company.
Great, thanks so much. We're glad that you're here with us. And now I'd like to turn to Corey to share a bit about his role and ArtsQuest.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Corey Stevens. I am the Volunteer and Internship Programs Manager with ArtsQuest, which is kind of a mouthful, but basically I coordinate our hundreds of volunteers throughout the year that make our programming possible, and I also hire and onboard about 25 interns annually across fall, spring, and summer semesters. And I should say that those figures are during a normal year and not a plague-ridden year. So it's a little bit less this year, but normally that's the amount of people we're working with. But ArtsQuest, very simply, is an arts and entertainment nonprofit Our mission is to make the arts as accessible to the community as possible. And some of the best ways we do that is through programming that you're probably familiar with if you're from the Lehigh Valley. We host Music Fest, Chris Kindle Mart, Oktoberfest. Every summer we have 50 free concerts at the Levitt Pavilion in front of the Steel Stacks. And then of course we have the Banana Factory on 3rd Street in Bethlehem, where artists rent out studios to work on their own personal stuff, and they fill the building with their newest work, but they're also teaching after school programs, regular classes available to the public, and we have a variety of opportunities for interns across the whole company, from public relations and marketing, graphic design. We have a little bit of corporate sponsorship, so interns that are interested in business development and fundraising have an opportunity there as well. And then some on the creative side, working with performing arts as they select talent that will come and perform at things like Music Fest, or working with the production team as they work on sound design, light design, and sound check before a concert. So we definitely offer a lot of opportunities that aren't necessarily available elsewhere.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. We look forward to hearing more today. As we look to the next slide, can you set the stage for us today, Corey?
Sure. So we're talking about attracting top interns today, and we felt that really broke down into 3 different categories. Number 1 is going to be to define your requirements. What is your internship program going to look like? What do you need interns for? What can you teach them, and how do you go about mentoring those students? Number 2 is going to be to articulate your company's story. Your company, no matter how big or small, has some kind of a story to it. What's your mission statement? How do you go about doing what you do? What do you stand for? Those are things that top interns are really interested in. They want to know that they're going to be working for a company that really aligns with their own worldviews, and a company that is going to be able to provide them a lot of development for their next step in their professional careers. And then number 3 is going to be, how do you actually connect with some of these candidates? What are the different ways and methods of making sure that you get in front of interested applicants?
Great, thank you. So let's start with that define your requirements. So I'm going to jump right in with some questions. Before hosting an internship program, where should a company or an organization start? And what should they consider when they're building a program? Lisa, can we start with you?
Sure. So I actually asked this question to my interns 2 summers ago. We started in the middle of the summer. I was doing a project with my intern to revamp all of our marketing materials, our website, what we were handing out at career fairs and on-campus events. And I did focus groups with the interns that I had in our office in Center Valley, as well as some of the other offices, and said to them, what do you want to hear? What do you want to know about a position? What attracts you to a company? The 3 things that I got back from them, obviously there was some differences in what people had to say, but unanimously students said the first thing that they look at as they're looking at positions is, do I qualify for this position? Then the next thing they look at is the role itself, and is this something that's interesting to them? And finally, the company, and if the company is somewhere that they could see themselves working. So before you even get to advertising a role or thinking about how you're going to connect with students, you need to be on that same page that the interns are on, of, do I qualify for this role? We actually at Olympus, I send out a survey, like a Microsoft Forms, to our managers ahead of recruiting, and I ask them to define the role that their intern is going to have in the summer, or whatever season we have them in, and what are the projects they're going to be working on, what are the skills that those interns will need to be successful in those projects. And that helps me to define a very concrete requirement, so that we know that when I go to recruit, we're recruiting the right students, and we're able to articulate for those students, do they qualify for the role? Do they have the skills that are needed? Because we know what those skills are that they need. Once I've done that survey, and we have that idea of, this is what success is going to look like for these interns, bringing these skills, accomplishing these projects, I'm able to define a scope. The number of interns that I need, and where they're going to sit in the business. So For example, in Center Valley, this past summer, it was a combination of a couple of engineering positions. Well, I should say in Center Valley, they were all virtual, but would have been seated in Center Valley. A couple of engineers, 7 marketing students, and 2 students who were in finance. That having that scope and the specific skill sets with it then gives me that needs inventory that I can define who are the partners that I want to work with to recruit those interns. And for the most part, the best place to start with that partnering are the schools and universities that we have to connect us with students. And so understanding that I might go somewhere different to recruit the 2 engineers than the marketing and finance people, I can start to capitalize on those partnerships as well to look for students that are going to match that skill set and the needs that we have as an organization.
Great. Corey, can you add or share from ArtsQuest's vantage point?
Sure. So one of the things I mentioned is that, we offer a variety of different internship programs across several different teams. So I would definitely add to what Lisa said there, that it's really important to understand exactly what each team is going to need in terms of what sort of skills they're looking from an intern. For instance, that production internship, we're going to be looking for someone that has experience working with soundboards or, any sort of audio equipment over someone who has more skill with the written word or is familiar with AP style, the way that the public relations team would be looking for. So it's really important to define exactly what success is going to look like for each of these different teams, especially if you have a wide range of options the way that ArtsQuest or Olympus does. And then also I would say, if you're a smaller company, it's a little bit easier to define those requirements just because, it might just be 1 intern and maybe just 3 employees, but still really, really important to consider, what do you feel you need to make sure that the internship program is a success. And then that's going to make it much easier for the next step, which is to tell the intern what you can offer them.
Great, thanks. That's really helpful. I think as we move on to the next question, this is really why people are tuning in, is saying, how are we going to get, now that I've got my roles and the number and what I need and what I've learned from my company that we can support in terms of interns, how do we get those interns' attention and how do we attract them to our business? So let's talk a little bit about that. So how do you articulate that story of your organization? How do you distill your company's value proposition into a compelling story that'll attract interns? And what are some important considerations? Corey, can we start with you?
Sure, absolutely. So I kind of tricked you guys. I snuck sort of the elevator pitch that I would normally give to an intern at a career fair into my intro slide. I said that ArtsQuest is an arts and entertainment nonprofit. Our mission is to make the arts accessible to the entire community. And one of the best ways we do that is through our large events like Music Fest and Christkindl Mart. It's a super quick pitch. It immediately tells the prospective intern who we are, what we do, how we do it, and really just gives that mission statement of we're trying to make the arts as accessible as possible. So you have to do the same thing with your company. What is your company? What do you stand for? How do you go about doing it? And what's one of the best examples of how you represent that mission? And once you get over that, you're able to explain more about the internship program in general and give the interns a few more details. But some of the things that you want to figure out is what does the day-to-day look like with your internship program? 100%, the number one question you're going to be asked by a prospective intern is, what does a regular day at your company look like? So you really have to be prepared for that question. What can an intern expect to be doing day in and day out throughout the semester that they're spending with you? What kind of opportunities are you providing? Whether it's ArtsQuest, where it's that wide range of opportunities, and whether it's, the fall semester, they work a little bit more with Oktoberfest and Christkindl Mart, whereas the summer semester works mostly with Music Fest. Really think about what sort of things are happening throughout the year that an intern can really get hands-on experience with, and make sure that that's part of what you're telling them when you're connecting with prospective interns. Another really important thing is who will they be working with? Who are the people that are going to be directly teaching these interns what they need to know in order to succeed within the program? And who are the people that they're going to be working with on a daily basis? Who are the people that might be writing a letter of recommendation for them at the end of a successful internship? you want to really leverage your brand no matter how big or small the company is. So you really want to think about, what does your name mean within the community? So if there's anything, that connects you to the community in any way, whether it's some sort of partnership you might have with a local government, or some sort of recognition you may have received from a newspaper or a magazine, use that to show that, even if your company is a little bit smaller, you've been making waves. A good example of this for ArtsQuest is we've been voted, Music Fest in particular has been voted the #1 music festival in North America by USA Today 2 years in a row. So even if you have a student that isn't local and isn't familiar with a program like Music Fest, I can still tell them that we've won that contest 2 years in a row, and we've beat out festivals that they might be familiar with, like Riot Fest in Chicago or Coachella, and that carries a lot of weight. So if you have something similar to that, make sure that you're using that in the story that you're telling to prospective interns.
Great, thanks. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, I would reiterate everything that Corey said. I think there's a lot of valuable things there. Not all of us have the medals hanging for being a top 100 anything necessarily. I know when I was working with that smaller consulting company, my story was a very different story than what we tell at Olympus. So it's, we're talking about attracting top interns here, not just kind of any old mediocre, like you want somebody good. And I will say that the expectation that students have is some of the things that Corey said. What are they going to be doing day to day? They want to be working on a meaningful project, contributing to a larger purpose overall, not just making copies and getting coffee for somebody. And in addition to the day-to-day, they're looking for mentorship, networking opportunities. So for each company to think about, what can I give these interns? What is the story that I'm telling? And again, going back to my consulting days, that story was different, but it was still a very good story. We were a small company that sat open plan, and the president and CEO of the company sat in a desk that was just across the room in the same open space as every other employee. He was very approachable. It was easy. He was happy to come and talk to the interns on a daily basis, check in, how are you doing? So to say to an intern, you're going to sit in the same office as the CEO and you can talk to him on a regular basis. It's still a very compelling story, and it says to them something from a networking perspective. On the flip side, working for a larger company now, I do have the ability to work with my managers to pair interns with mentors and pair them with additional networking opportunities. And that's something that I make sure that I'm articulating to those interns at the start. Usually they're asking about it. Yes, to Corey's point, they're going to ask, what do I do on a day-to-day basis? But they'll pretty quickly jump in and ask about what sort of programs do they have to learn more, expand their own horizons. And so those are things that are important to articulate to them. Back to that, what I said for my intern focus groups at the beginning, once they've checked the boxes that they know they qualify for the job, then they're looking for, what am I going to get out of it? Another point that I think is important in telling your story is thinking about your messenger for this. So I work in human resources. I know that students don't really like talking to me all that much. I can tell them the nice high-level stuff, but they love to hear from someone that was an intern previously who can speak to what that experience was, or someone who's a younger professional within the organization. They like to hear from the manager that they might be working with in the course of the internship, or somebody at the very least who is familiar with the day-to-day operations. And I can give that information secondhand, but it's much more powerful when it's coming from someone who has a firsthand perspective on it. So again, leveraging your brand and telling your story for a smaller company in particular, you're going to have that authenticity when you speak with a student. And I encourage you to bring that with you. That's part of your brand. That's part of who you are. Don't think of that as something that's an impediment. I know when I first started recruiting for a smaller company and they were kind of asking about HR, and I'm like, no, I am HR and I'm a consultant, so I can tell you about both of these things. And that's something that I think there will be something compelling about your organization, whether you are 15 people sitting in a room or 1,500.
Excellent, thanks.
I wanted to
Lisa,
jump in again. I'm sorry, Carrie Ann.
please.
Lisa reminded me of something as she mentioned, the smaller company with the open floor plan and the CEO sitting right next to you. That is something that you can absolutely use to your advantage if you're a smaller company. So, if it would just be one intern, you and two other employees in a garage, that's something that's important to talk about in terms of how much impact that one intern can have on your entire company. Just because you are a little bit smaller, and you'd be able to give them more individualized attention, and they would have a lot of opportunity to get their hands on everything that company is doing and to really make a change that could last for years to come. One thing that I've been telling a lot of our prospective interns as they're applying for internships during this, COVID-19 timeline where we're doing everything virtually, and, ArtsQuest in particular is really sort of reinventing the wheel of how we do events and when we do events. There's a lot of opportunity for interns to come in with new ideas and really help us build what these new events look like. How can we keep them safe? How can we, keep the train rolling without canceling everything? So the more you can talk about, how much impact a specific intern would have on your company as a whole, the better it is. And the smaller your company is, that, like Lisa said, that's not necessarily an impediment. That can be an advantage to some interns who are really looking to make a mark.
Thanks so much for jumping in. Excellent. Lisa, I'm going to go back to a story that you told me earlier about being next to another competitive company at a career fair and having seen that long line for that competitor, and then thinking about how you could distill that value proposition and tell those potential interns that weren't currently waiting to talk to you what was going on at your organization to attract them to you. Can you share a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Corey was just speaking, I was thinking, Corey and I have made an assumption that we're just so deep in our world of interacting with these students that to level back out, where we are right now, students have choices. And it's very important to recognize the reason that you need to take the time to think about your story and articulate your story and articulate your value proposition is they're not coming to you begging for a job. They're probably looking at other places, and oftentimes interns are entertaining multiple offers. Some of that has changed because of COVID, but it hasn't gone away from a competitive standpoint. So Carrie, and I think what illustrates this well, and actually so I talked about needing to do these focus groups for branding Olympus. The reason I did that, I started with Olympus at the end of the summer, went straight into career fair season in the fall. And I was at a career fair at Penn State, the main campus, so like lots and lots and lots of students. And Olympus's booth was right next to Stryker's booth. And there was this long line the entire time at Stryker. And finally, my colleague and I were just we were getting people coming through, but no line. And so we went over and asked a couple of the students, like, what are they just like giving out cash prizes? Why is everybody standing here? And everybody was saying, no, they're a medical device company. We really, we're really looking for internships in medical devices, and there just aren't that many companies that have it. And the two of us looked at each other and said, okay, well, we're not going to go poach people from Stryker's line, but here we are, a medical device company with students standing literally right next to us, who couldn't tell from our lovely banner that had a picture of our office what we did. And so that was where this need to revamp all of our marketing material came from, to say, tell our story. Who are we? What are you going to be doing when you work here? Yes, we are a medical device company, and we have those sorts of opportunities. So Carrie Ann, thanks for the question. I think it helps to articulate exactly why telling your story is so important, because without it, students might not recognize the value you have to offer them, and they'll go to literally the booth next door to you and look at those opportunities instead.
And it's such a great story and such a simple miss that then once you figured out why those people were lined up next door and that you were offering similar opportunities, that you could then capitalize on explaining and showing more clearly to people perhaps unknown with of your organization what you are offering. And I think that's just such a great illustration of pivoting and doing just that. Before we leave this question and slide, I did want to follow back with the value that today's students put on mentors and networking and the like. Can either of you talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure, I'll jump in. It is so important to talk about who the interns are going to be working with on a daily basis, who's going to be teaching them the ins and outs of the team that they're joining. So a good example for me is that, when someone is hired for an internship at ArtsQuest, they're going to be working directly with somebody like our director of communications if they're on the public relations team. So that's the guy that's responsible for all of the outreach we do, connecting with the community, connecting with teams like WFMZ News or the Morning Call, the Express Times, and really he'll be able to show them, exactly what that process is, exactly who the contacts in the area are. And so it's really important networking wise, just for meeting all those different people, working with someone who has such experience in the field and with this company in particular, is just going to be so important for building that foundation that a lot of top interns are looking for. And then when you're working with a team like Performing Arts, where you're working on booking all of the bands and the artists for things like Levitt and Music Fest, it's so cool to work with that team, to work with artist management, and to really learn what that process is like, and then to take that to whatever your next step is. So the more you can tell interns about those specific mentors that have such, experience in the different fields that they're looking at, the better off you're going to be.
Great, thanks. Thinking back to our last week's session on remote internships, it just reminds me of Stacy Halliday from Air Products and Alyssa Lopano from Discover Lehigh Valley talked a lot about purposefully planning, even in a remote world, and obviously in a face-to-face world, making sure that their interns were given the opportunity to connect not only with the department that they were working in, but with all of the other people or departments of the organization, and to really have an understanding of what the organization is and how it functions. And I think even networking interns across departments was a really strong point that Stacy and Alyssa were not only doing in face-to-face internship opportunities, but also in remote. And so I think that is really valuable, we know, to today's interns and today's students.
Carrie Ann, I agree with that. And I just want to put emphasis, one, as you've said, this is something that students highly value. I could get on my high horse about Gen Z and all the things that they're interested in, and I won't. You can look that up. I get way too nerdy about it, but it is something that they value. It's something that companies sometimes shy away from because they think, oh, this is a lot of work. And it could be a lot of work if you as one person want to take it on and do it, but you can find other ways of making it happen. So I'm a team of one who's managing interns across 19 sites, a lot of logistics going on. I personally cannot facilitate all of those connections. But at the beginning of the summer, I say to each manager, you're required to assign a mentor. And then I follow up and say, who is the mentor? Connect me with them. I pull the mentors together once. And I say to the mentors, here are 3 things that you're responsible for. And one of the 3 things that the mentor is responsible for is connecting their intern with a minimum of 3 other individuals who the intern might be interested in networking with. So for me, it's a 60-minute meeting of training mentors and an email to the managers to say, make sure that they have this. The interns really appreciate it. It's not that much work for me. And it actually helps the managers because they're getting other people that can support the interns other than that one individual. So it's win-win-win. And I don't want people to shy away from offering it just because you think it might be a lot of legwork. You can do it in a pretty efficient way that actually helps add the highest value to the interns, because those mentors and managers are going to be better at connecting them to good networking people than somebody in a kind of central HR role might be anyway.
Great points. Thanks so much. Great conversation. And looking at our last point that we'll highlight today before moving into a Q&A. So all of those of you watching, start to think up and queue up any questions that you have so far for today. But let's talk a bit about connecting with these candidates, these prospective interns. How do you attract them to your company or your organization, and how do you engage them? Can we start with, oh my goodness, I think Lisa, we're starting with for this one, if that's all right.
Sure. So one of the important things in terms of connecting with candidates is bringing together those last two pieces that Corey and I have been talking about. What are your needs and what can you offer to the student? And once you have those things together, you have that compelling story that helps you reach out to them. Without that, it doesn't matter how good you are at showing up at events, plastering yourself all over the internet, whatever it is, because students will immediately see through that there's kind of no substance there. So you want to have an authentic message that comes through. There are different ways that you can connect with students. I would say the first opportunity that you have is making sure that you're taking the story, taking the position itself and articulating it in a job description, putting that job description on your website, and then thinking about where else might students be looking for a job. No students, maybe, I don't know, maybe 6, like if I have to pick, but there are not very many students who come directly to the Olympus website looking for an internship. They're looking for an aggregator type website that's going to help them find all marketing internships in a specific area. I poll all of our applicants to understand where they first heard about the position, and that's why I say there really are very few who first heard about a position on our website. A majority of our interns and co-ops hear about the position on a university job board. So whatever school they're attending will have a unique site that students from that school can go to find opportunities that are targeted directly at those students. That's where most of my interns find their jobs, and that's followed up second by Indeed.com being the place that students find it. So if you're a larger company who has a formal applicant tracking system, Indeed is probably already scraping your jobs and pulling them up there. If you're a smaller company, you can look and see if Indeed has actually found your job or not. But if it's not on your website, it may be worth investing in the time and effort and fee where needed to place that job on Indeed. That's my personal experience of where students have looked to find positions. In terms of the school job boards, if you're not familiar with them, I would say the best way to figure out what you need to do is reach out to local universities, the ones that you want to partner with, and they will walk you through it. All of the career centers, especially those here in the Lehigh Valley, have been fantastic to work with and have people dedicated to helping us as employers find the right students, and they'll walk through the technical aspects. Here's the board that you want to post on, here's how you do it. About 50% of employers use a platform called Handshake, which many of the employers here in the Lehigh Valley use. And that's my personal preference because you can put a position up in one place at one school, for example, that's using Handshake, and then for free, you can actually copy that posting and just check boxes, check through a list of any other colleges throughout the country you would like to have that position sent off to as well. And it will collect resumes there, or it can filter candidates back to your own internal applicant tracking system. So if you're not using Handshake, I think that's a really good place that helps you connect with a lot of students quickly. There are some other platforms, Simplicity, Purple Briefcase being some main ones. Those don't, at this point in time, have a free option to let you connect with a lot of schools all at once. So it takes a little bit more bandwidth and legwork to do that. And this is where, as I said in our first question, figuring out which schools you want to partner with will help you identify where to focus your efforts. I think Carrie Ann can tell us a little bit more about the guide that LVEDC has put together for internships, and it has that contact information for different schools. Will help you kind of narrow in on who should I be connecting with to find specific students. So if you're just starting, I would say that's a great place to start off. Diving deeper into the campus connections piece of it, again, I would advocate for talking to the schools because they have a really good pulse on what their students want. I have done anything from radio interviews with a school local radio station telling people how to apply to jobs and you know, how to write a resume, to, for example, an event that was suggested by one of our partners, Muhlenberg College. I mentioned marketing majors a lot. That's the major that we hire the most of. So we were looking for just a way to connect to marketing students to kind of build a longer term pipeline. And they suggested doing an event that was an Olympus panel talking to students about careers in marketing. And so it was talking to all class years, talking to people who might not even be a marketing major, but are interested in a potential career in marketing. And so I brought in 3 people from Olympus who have very different career paths, but all could be called marketing. And that was one way that we were able to connect with a really interested and engaged group of students. Muhlenberg did all of the marketing for us and connecting us to the students. We just had to show up with the panel that morning and we had a great discussion. So there are all sorts of events that are going to connect you to interested students. The students who are motivated to come to these events are also going to be the ones who turn into your top performers as interns as well. So I can't emphasize enough really the value of connecting with the career centers when you want to do more like deeper reach and authentic engagement with students. I'll stop and let Corey speak to the latter 2 points on this slide since I've been going for a while on it.
If you don't mind, I'm going to quickly jump in too, though, just to give a little bit more information. We at LVEDC, in partnership with those career development offices at all of our colleges and universities, did create what is called an internship toolkit. There are 2 parts. One is a guide on how to create an internship program, thinking about a lot of what we've talked about today. What roles are you looking for? What do you need? How do you do it? Kind of pieces, with a lot of best practices and excerpts from a lot of our different colleges and universities, information about creating and maintaining internships. So that's going to be a really great resource if you're looking to either start or grow an internship program. We also recognized, as Lisa said, companies are looking to connect with our colleges and universities, and we needed that one-stop shop for your organization to be able to look at across all the colleges and universities, say, hey, who can I connect with? What are the URLs and websites where I can post on that career platform, whether it's Handshake or Simplicity? What majors at this college or university offer internships? We've pulled that information together as well in the form of a directory. That's actually on our LVEDC website, and I'm happy to also share that out, but it's something that we're hoping will be very helpful, kind of help to make those seamless connections between the colleges and the employers and organizations looking to connect with interns. And then the additional piece, I just want to reiterate and amplify what Lisa said about working with your career development offices. I mean, what a cool story about essentially Muhlenberg, sharing out that information, getting that captive audience, and then Lisa and Olympus just needing to share what those opportunities are. I mean, this is across any of our organizations, any of our higher ed organizations. So definitely think in some of those creative ways and do that outreach, because I'm sure that there's a ton of interest in getting you involved in each of those institutions, because your organization needs the interns. The colleges want to make sure that the kids are getting those internships, and the interns want to figure out and learn and try out any future career path for them. So it's really another win-win-win, as we've talked about in the past. All right, and thanks, Corey. Let's pass this one over to you.
All right, yeah, to echo what Lisa said, I also can't emphasize enough how important it is to work with campus career development centers. And I just wanted to say, if all of this seems a little, overwhelming, if you are a smaller company and you're just starting out with an internship program and this is just a lot of information coming at you, I just want to say that you being here right now is already, you're already doing a great job. You're already taking a step in the right direction. So good on you. So the next point, referrals, that's a really interesting one because quite simply, excuse me, it's just about folks sharing the opportunities that you have with people that they know. So for instance, I mentioned our director of communications before. He actually has relationships with journalism professors at Lehigh University, at Kutztown University. So he is able to, let those professors know, hey, we're looking for somebody spring, summer semester, and those professors will send students directly to us to get some of those PR internships. We have a similar relationship with our programming director at the ArtsQuest Center with the cinema and comedy team. We get a lot of students from Kutztown because someone from Kutztown happens to be part of their film department and on our board for the cinema. So that's a connection that works out a lot of times. And also, previous interns are also one of the best sources of referrals because if they have a successful experience with you and they have an enjoyable experience with that internship, they will go back to their college and they'll share with all their friends, hey, this summer I had an awesome internship with Olympus, with ArtsQuest. You should think about doing it too. And I've actually gotten several interns that way from friends just sort of going back to campus and telling their friends, hey, ArtsQuest is a great opportunity. You should check it out. One other thing that you can do, and one story that I like to share, is that, if you have an intern that isn't necessarily a good fit for you, but you know of other employers that are looking for interns as well, and that intern might be a better fit there, you can also refer that prospective intern to that company. I've done that with Link. I had connected with a student once who, she was a qualified candidate, but the team she was applying for ended up going with someone else. But I didn't want to just leave it there. So I knew she'd be a great fit with this other company, Link, and I sent her over there, and it actually, it turned into a successful connection, and she was able to intern with them over that summer. So that's an example of, even though that's not helping you hire an intern necessarily, you still are committing to the success of that young professional, and you're hoping that, that employer would then return the favor if the opportunity was ever offered to them as well. The next point is social media. And as we were creating this presentation, we kind of went back and forth on this in terms of how much effort you should put into trying to get your message across on social media that you're hiring for interns. This is more something where if you already have a strong social media presence, absolutely use that to your advantage. Just send a post out there, hey, we're hiring interns for X semester, apply here and attach the link. And one important point I want to make with that is that while, depending on what your demographic is for that social media presence you have, you may not be reaching prospective interns directly, but you might be reaching people, that will pass that information along, kind of like its own little referral. So, you might post on Twitter, hey, we're hiring interns, and someone that's just following your company might see that. They might have a niece, nephew that they know is looking for an internship, and they'll pass that information along. If you don't already have a social media presence, you don't want to, stress yourself out by trying to create that presence just to promote the fact that you have internships. That might be an area where you might want to leverage your brand in more traditional ways by connecting with campus students and going to different campus events. And then just, when your company grows and you naturally get that social media presence, just remember to make your call for interns part of that presence as your company is on the rise.
Corey, I want to pick up on something that you were saying in terms of the referrals, and you mentioned you referring somebody to Link, and while that's not necessarily helping your company, I would actually add to that it is helping your company because it's helping your brand. And going back to how do you tell your story, part of that story for that intern is that ArtsQuest connected them to their internship. And just like Corey said, they, interns are a good source of referrals for future interns. They're also a good source of detracting from your brand if you haven't done a good job. Hey, I had this interview with Olympus and the hiring manager was a jerk. I'm not going back there again. I hope that no one has ever said that. We try hard not to have that happen, but let's face the reality that bad news travels faster than good news does many times. So by being purposeful as an employer and doing those connections, you are reinforcing your company brand and building that and creating something that students will know about and hear about, and actually emphasizes that goodwill and the authenticity of those connections, that students will remember that. We had, for this past summer, we had Olympus was supposed to have our normal 50+ interns, and shutdown happened right in the middle of our hiring. And I had offers out to, I think it was 15 interns that like the offers had gone out, they had accepted. We decided we would commit to hosting those internships, but just not knowing what the summer would bring, we weren't going to hire anymore, which I had, this was heartbreaking to me. I had 11 or 12 interns or individuals who there was an offer approval in process for that individual. There were 2 interns who I was supposed to call on a specific day with offers for internships that we then said, hold on, let's evaluate this. And so there were several very high quality individuals who we wanted to extend an offer to, that we just needed to pump the brakes on the internship program for the summer. And through LVEDC, we were able to connect those candidates who were our first, and we said to them, you know, you were fantastic. Unfortunately, the circumstances have changed. We aren't going to be able to move forward. Please keep in touch. And in the meantime, here's a company that we've heard of who are looking specifically for engineers, marketing majors. And we were able to connect multiple students with another organization. And I believe that there were a couple of them who did get hired into summer internships through those connections as well. So that's something that I was doing, one, because I felt horrible. I'd already talked to these students, but 2, even just beyond just human connection, I knew that that was going to help those people, and it was going to help Olympus's brand to say, we're not trying to leave you in the lurch. We're trying to do what's the best here.
That is a lot to take in. Thank you so much, Corey and Lisa. Great information and a lot to think about. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you participants on the line. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask of Lisa or Corey, please do start to type them in the chat, and we'll get right to your questions. Okay, let's get started. If your intern isn't a local resident, do you pay for housing for your interns, and where have you found housing?
I'm happy to start with this one. We do have interns who come from out of town. Olympus doesn't at this point in time pay for housing specifically. We do pay our interns a competitive wage. I know this differs across different employers, some who are able to provide housing or not. Where do interns find housing? We have several options that we do give out to interns. Muhlenberg College as well as Lehigh University are closest to Olympus, and host will rent out dorms for the summer for the interns, and that's something that either the employer can enter into a larger agreement to work with that, or we've had students who have just gone there and actually really liked it. There are other interns there, PPL's interns were there last summer, and so our interns got to know interns from other companies really well, just because they were housed in this dorm environment, and really enjoyed that. And we also connect them with some of the more informal sources. Sometimes they're able to, by connecting with other interns ahead in the summer, they're able to find another Olympus intern who's willing to, has room for a roommate, or can point them to somebody who might have a room. I'm hedging myself because from a legal standpoint, because we aren't providing this for them, we also can't make particular recommendations to them. It's not something that we manage at all. So either we tell them, 1, the colleges have open rooms and here's the information, so look into that, or 2, here's a list of other summer interns. We ask the interns first, are you willing to have your information shared? And if they are, then we just network those interns together ahead of time so that they can band together and find housing. That's how we handle it.
That's a great question. ArtsQuest is a nonprofit, so we don't necessarily have the budget to provide housing for interns. Luckily for us, with fall and spring semesters, typically we'll have local students anyway, so students will already be in their dorms for the year. Over the summer, we have seen that, usually it's a lot of local students that even if they're going to a faraway university, in the faraway land of New York or something like that, they're home for the summer anyway, and so they're just local generally, and that those students that might go to Lehigh University or Kutztown University but don't live in the area will typically stay on campus through summer, whether because they have summer classes or they just have an apartment that they're keeping for the course of the summer months. But yeah, that is a really interesting thing to consider, especially when you're thinking about, what do you want to provide the interns that are working with you for a semester. But that's going to vary depending on, what your company's resources are.
Thank you. Another question, and this has come up as I work with K-12 partners, are internships available for high school students or only college? And now this is recognizing that the K-12 systems are being asked by the state essentially to provide these types of workplace opportunities or get their students into different workplaces. And so this is a tough one that I've found, but I'd love to hear from Corey and Lisa's vantage point. Do you have them, or have you heard of other organizations that offer internships for high school students?
I'll start on that one. For me and for ArtsQuest, I would say it's more so a case-by-case basis. If we have a high school student that is super interested in working with us in some capacity and has the skill set that we're looking for, we're absolutely willing to partner with them. I remember we partnered with an intern from Moravian Academy, which is a private high school that's in our area, with the production team. So working with sound design, light design, they already had that skill set and they were very interested in working with our team on, concerts and different events that we do throughout the year. So it just worked out that, we had a high school student that actually reached out to us to ask specifically, like, hey, could I have, is this an opportunity that would be open to me? And they happened to have the skills that we were looking for in a production intern. But I would say that I don't necessarily go out and search for high school students. We do absolutely try to get college students so that we can offer them college credit for their work with us. They might be receiving credit through the high school as well. And as you said, Carrie Ann, some high schools are looking into, making sure that students get more workplace experience before graduation. So, that might be an avenue that I have to explore more. But I would say that for us, we take that on a case-by-case basis.
So for Olympus, so there's not a straightforward answer here. Our formal internship program and co-op programs, the requirement is that students have completed their freshman year of college. In some instances, managers even want somebody who's completed a sophomore year. So for those programs, it has to be a college student and not a high school student. Being in the medical device industry, we're a very highly regulated industry and we pay strict attention to all of our employment practices. So any position where someone is doing work, we need to be paying them and we need to be specific about what they're being paid for, especially when we get to high school students. Is this person a minor? So making sure that we're very strictly adhering to employment laws and regulations is important to us. And that's just from the legal HR side that I've got to be worried about it. But then there's the experience side of what is the student doing and how will it kind of help them in the long run. And there are, as Corey said, a lot of opportunities where on a case-by-case basis, we're able to find something that's more like a shadowing opportunity. Again, we have had through, for example, the Fay Foundation, we have had summer interns who are high school students. That actually becomes very hard for us as an employer to manage because of the making sure that we're having them do something that's valuable to them for multiple weeks in a row, but isn't work that we should be paying someone else to do. So where we've been able to connect high school students into employment experience and just practical experience has much more been through shadowing or hosting, like we'll host a STEM day from time to time where we're bringing students in that way. But the formal internship program, we do limit to college students.
Excellent. I think that those are really great other ways to get involved in the various systems and get involved with students. So even if they're not in high school, they're still looking and you're raising that brand awareness of your organization so that when they do get to college, they can think back about what a great place and what a cool place it might be to, now that I'm in college, intern at your company. So thanks. Great information. And looking at the time, I think we're actually going to close. Again, if anyone has any questions or would like follow-up, please email me my information, or you can follow up with Liz, from whom you got the Zoom link from, and we'd be happy to continue these conversations with you. But we are out of time. Thank you to both of you, Corey and Lisa. Your willingness to spend time this morning and sharing your interest, your experiences about attracting and recruiting interns is really greatly appreciated. I know that people have gained a lot of information, a lot of insights and tips to take back to their own companies and organizations. Also, thank you again to all of our sponsors, Highmark Blue Shield, East Stroudsburg University, Muhlenberg College, Northampton Community College, and Penn State Lehigh Valley for your support. To those of you who joined us this morning, thanks for spending time with us today. We hope that you've gained some valuable ideas that you can move forward with as you seek to attract and recruit interns to your organization. We know that interns may be your employees in the future, and they're a critical part of your talent pipeline. If you have any follow-up questions, as I said, please connect. Also, that internship toolkit is on LVEDC's website, and I'd be happy to share that with you as well. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.